Have you ever felt that you were being treated unfairly by a law school professor? While the topic is taboo inherently because we expect such a high level of professionalism from professors, nonetheless law school professors, this scenario can happen at any time. If you're taking a course and you feel that the effort you're putting into the course is not being matched by the grades you're earning in that course, owing to some specific bias or unfairness or power abuse on behalf of your professor, well, what do you do? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. My name is Pamela Metani and I'm a business lawyer and I'm the principal lawyer here at Graphene Business Law. Of course, our slogan is all business all the time, and we help business law clients virtually and throughout Ontario. However, law school and law students do have a soft spot in my heart, so regularly we also post content that's specific to law students, some of the questions that you guys email us, and also some of the law school memories I have myself from law school and from my own circle of friends, and just remembering what was really important to us at the time. When it comes to law school professors, my experience has been that overall there's a very high level of professionalism involved. They can be a little, quirky and different in their own ways, but that's just humankind. That's not a law school professor thing. And in all fairness, for somebody that's gotten to such an accomplished stage in their life, chances are that, there is a little something quirky about them, because that's that quirk that it can sometimes take to pour your life into any one specific thing, and in their case, the study of law. So we're not here talking about, the little things like a little comment or a little, one mark off when you felt the answer should have been a certain kind of way. What this video focuses on is specific scenarios where you feel like a professor is out to get you, where you feel that this professor is wrecking your life. They're having tremendous negative impact on your mental health, on the grades you're earning, and you're worried about how this can affect your future. And you might think, well, Pam, is this coming from personal experience? And I do want to say right off the bat, because there could be people watching this that I went to law school with, or maybe even professors themselves, this video is actually one that is not based off of my lived personal experience. I did have two really strange professors in law school, one in my first year and one in my second year of law school. However, from doing a little bit of investigating on my own and just trying to get that extra talk time with these professors, I was able to deduce that these profs that I felt had, undergraded, undervalued, underserved, under something. They, as it turns out, they were kind of just a little bit more checked out mentally and kind of treating everybody the same way. So although the treatment I received from these two professors in particular, one in my first and one in my second year of law school, was a little off, I did come to find out that this was not having to do anything in particular with me. It wasn't pointed, bias or power play or anything like that. However, I've heard multiple experiences from friends of mine, now colleagues, that have been horrific and horrendous when it comes to power abuses by law school professors. And that's what spirits today's video. Some of these friends, all of them I'm friends with, but one of them in particular I'm extremely close to. And what they experienced and what they suffered in law school owing to unfairness by a professor, nobody should have to experience. And I'm going to say one more thing in terms of what inspired this video. Although I'm a lawyer now, I still have contacts in the law school community. I still know people that are going to law school. And within the last year, actually, a student had reached out to me asking for some help on how to deal with a really difficult professor. They were going to school, I'm not going to say the school, but I'll say it was in one of the Western Canadian provinces. Graphene is in Ontario, and this happened to be, in Western Canada. And I posted on some lawyers groups that I'm part of, and I asked, does anybody have any advice for somebody going through this really tough scenario? And I could not believe the amount of messages I received in my inbox about lawyers saying, is it so-and-so at this school, so-and-so at that school, so-and-so? Almost every single law school again, because I'm in Ontario, this group happened to be Ontario specific, but when it comes to life advice, it's not necessarily jurisdictional. So in this Ontario group, lawyers group, almost every single law school in Ontario was named. And I assure you that if I polled lawyers en masse in Ontario, every single law school would be named. And specifically, professors within almost all of the law schools were named. So that kind of hits at the fact that, yeah, it's a rampant problem. It's not a one-off. But when it happens to you, when you're the one getting the short end of the stick from a professor, it can feel so isolating and it can feel like a one-off. And that's part of the mental power play that gets to you, because professors do hold a lot of power over their students, especially in law school, where we need to be in and out of there in 3 years, get our articles, get our jobs, feed our families, move up that ladder. And if somebody holds you back, the impact can be, it can be anything all the way up to dropping out of school, or even worse, taking it out on yourself and doing something that could harm you in a more, serious and permanent manner, because mentally you just, you're so impacted by what's going on. So I say all of that to highlight that it's a serious topic. I know it is. So many of the videos on this channel are on the, striving for the positive, like how to get the best grades, how to develop discipline, how to develop work ethic, all of that. But this is a real issue, and it's one of the darker issues in law school, but it's one that needs to get addressed. And I don't know if there's any videos like it on YouTube right now, so I wanted to take that time and space so that next time somebody Googles, what to do about a difficult law school professor, there's a resource out there for them. That being said, what specific strategies, do I suggest you think of as a lawyer? And as somebody that, while might not personally have been through it, I've been through it multiple times in the sense of helping others get through it, helping my friends, helping law school students that are in law school right now get through it. The very first thing with any sort of human conflict, I think, is to have that initial conversation, make that space to say, you're not going to come out swinging saying, why are you bullying me? Why are you misusing your power? But, make that one-on-one appointment with a professor as soon as you feel you're being treated a little bit differently. As soon as, don't wait to compile the evidence. Take that appointment and make it the very first time. Put it in your record that, within 24 hours of being treated this way, I reached out to this professor asking them to schedule a meeting, okay? And when you go to that initial conversation, what are you going to say? Again, you're not going to say, why are you bullying me? Why are you abusing me? Why are you this and that? Okay, those are very heavy words. And unfortunately, the truth is this law school professor, if you're the average law student, and not super connected or this and that, is going to be able to run circles around you logically and legally and with that side of the argument. So you want your side to be just opening that conversation. Hey, I received this paper back. I kind of was surprised by the grade I got because I worked so hard on this item, and I was wondering if you could tell me what I could do differently next time, okay? Or, if there's any opportunities for extra credit, or, just what I'm trying to say is a more open, neutral conversation. You're not going to say you're treating me differently than my friends. You're not going to say this and that, or at least I don't suggest you to. Again, keeping in mind the person you're talking to. And that's just part of the game. Knowing how to talk within that game is the biggest part of the game, okay? So that's what I would have as an initial conversation. And if the treatment that you feel is different, pertains to maybe you got graded lower than you were expecting, something like that, then next time something is due, talk to the professor before you submit any work and get their buy-in as to whether you're on the right track or not. Because once somebody is invested in what you're doing, it's going to be a lot harder for them psychologically to trash what you're doing because they've bought in. So I want to say that about the initial conversation. If you feel that the way you're being treated differently is not so much academic or grades or something like that, but it's something gearing toward discrimination or comments that are sexist or racist or whatever, religion oriented, whatever they can be, then that's something that I think you're entitled to have a more clear check on the person. Hey, you made this comment. You know, I'm coming to you not as a student in this case. I'm coming to you human to human. I don't think this comment is appropriate for these reasons. And I'd like us to take this opportunity to maybe ask each other questions about why this isn't appropriate and why I don't think that that's the right messaging to share as a professor in front of the law school, right? So it's going to differ depending on what kind of treatment you think you're receiving that's not above board. But again, that's where that initial conversation comes into play. If it's on the academic side and the initial conversation hasn't cleared anything up, next thing I would suggest you do is get the Dean of Academics involved from the law school. Get them involved and get them involved privately and have that buy-in, maybe even in person if you could. Now, this is where it gets really tricky because if you send that Dean of Academic an email, chances are by the time you're out of that office, that email has been forwarded to the professor themselves. And you might wonder, is this going to make me even a bigger target? Of course, that's somewhere your mind would go to. But at the very least, you're putting things on paper. And one nasty scenario I saw with my colleague at this school at West is that the professor that was just blatantly discriminating against him was actually like best friends with the Dean of Academic. So trying to get through them proved to be a brick wall that was impenetrable. He had to make so much noise and get every dean of the school involved and just really, really escalate things to have so many eyes on the problem that eventually maybe somebody could say, hey, this is not okay. But just as with humans, you know, you see cliques forming in high school, you see cliques forming in elementary school. At the end of the day, who's occupying these positions? Human beings. And they can be irrational, and they can be illogical, and they can be discriminatory, just as so many people are. So trying to get through a professor, be aware that you don't know the connections that they might have with those deans or those higher positions of leadership in the background. And that's a risk you're going to have to take. But at the end of the day, the more people you involved, again, just as my friend, you're playing into that numbers game that if it's just two, yeah, of course, two people can collide. If it's five, maybe one of them will say, hey, this isn't right. If it's 20, you know, somebody is so much more likely to say, hey, this isn't right. So escalating it with the right dean is something to do as well. If it's a matter, again, on the social side, like sexism, racism, religious discrimination, sexual discrimination, anything like that, then I don't know if the Dean of Academics would be the right person. Maybe find another dean or just straight up go to the dean of the school, because there's no place for comments like that or discrimination like that anywhere, especially in our profession where we're supposed to help others avoid being treated that way. So that's something maybe you go directly to, you know, the big dean, so to speak, and not the other, well, I don't want to call them baby deans, but you know what I mean. Like there's one dean of the law school and there's deans of different things going on. I don't want to say underneath, but at the end of the day, yeah, if you're Dean of Academics, there's somebody above you and that's the dean of the entire law school. So just in terms of that path. Next thing I would do, if this, you know, keeping in mind we're on our third step now, so first is the initial conversation, second is the dean situation. Next thing I would do is have a check-in with yourself through this process about the status of your mental health. There is no, and it's something that's not talked about enough in our profession, but unfortunately for some people things can get so dark so quickly that there's no limit to how much they're going to suffer mentally from being in a difficult situation, okay? And if you feel that that suffering is reaching the tipping point, it's not worth hurting yourself. Nothing ever is. It's not worth living in misery and like having that injection of hurt every day. It's not worth your life being negatively impacted on a like long-term basis. So if you have, you know, have that check-in with yourself, and if you feel that mentally this is coming to be too much, then you come at that crossroads of, do I buckle down and do whatever I can just to get through the semester knowing I'll never see this professor again, okay? Or do I maybe pull back here and say that, and when I'm about to say, I mean, it even hurts me to say out loud because it's so unfair that you might get the short end of the stick despite already being in a scenario you're only in because you got the short end of the stick by being treated by this professor that way. But maybe you pull out of this course altogether for the semester and you try to add that extra course onto your load next semester or next year or whatever it might be, right? At the end of the day, from a mental health perspective, which is just the most important thing, it is important to recognize that you have, for a 3-year Juris Doctor, I believe most law schools in Canada, probably the US as well, give you up to 6 years to complete. If you need to take that extra year to keep yourself healthy and safe and alive, take the year. Take the year. Be happy. Invest in yourself. Make connections with lawyers. Make real practical connections. And take that extra time. If for whatever reason that one course, let's say you're in 1L and it's one of the core courses, becomes this hangnail that necessitates like an extra year. If you're in 2 and 3L and a course isn't going well, I suspect you'd be much more likely to avoid that extra year route by just adding the course onto next semester and having a semester with, let's say, 3 courses and one with 5 as opposed to each with 4. Okay, but that check-in with your mental health is crucial, because it's gonna keep you above board for the rest of the semester, whatever you decide to do. If you decide that maybe battling this out every single day when you can just take the course next semester isn't for you, deep breath. Well, at least you know the second you make that decision, you're done with the situation. If you decide, for whatever reason, your choices are yours. If you decide that this is a scenario where maybe, you zip it and put your head down and just try to get through the semester, well, you've got that as your purpose now. Just get to the end, just get to the end, just get to the end. And by the way, once you get to the end, there's nothing saying you can't go after an injustice once you've already gotten that credit in your pocket. So do try and be strategic as well, just as no doubt any professor misusing their power has their own strategies at play. They have their own connections. They have their own things that they know very well what they're doing, okay? And in the midst of all of this, the one suggestion as a lawyer is, of course, going to be what? Paper everything, record everything, okay? And I don't mean record like with a little clicker and, up to their mouth. I mean, keep the evidence, like make a file out of this. Consider this your first case ever as a lawyer, and receive this grade, how to talk about it, make your notes to yourself, was treated this way, day 2, went to the dean, this was the result, day 3, this comment was made by the professor once again, or received another grade that I felt was unfair owing to these reasons. Like, keep your records. And the follow-up naturally might be, well, keep my records for what? Suing, in layman's terms, a law school professor is not the easiest thing in the world. And you can imagine why. You can imagine why from a policy perspective it wouldn't be so easy. You can imagine why from a technical and skill perspective, suing a lawyer that's teaching you how to be a lawyer wouldn't be the easiest thing in the world. It's not something that we see a lot of cases on. If you go through the databases, it's not something where there's a lot to pick through and to work through. However, if it's on the discriminatory side, basic human justices and injustices, like, that's a human matter where things need to be recorded no matter what. And then you decide what to do. You speak to the right legal professionals, and you see what course of resolve you can have. And sometimes that might even be just the professor, getting out of that school and ensuring nobody else ever suffers the way you did. Sometimes it can be something that's specifically geared toward you and resolve with what you've gone through, and making sure that there's something done to sort of make fair again, or bring you back to a position you might have been in had you not come across this abusive person. And if it's on the grade side, well, just keep your notes, keep your records, and keep pushing through. Ask the professor for as much help as you can. Some people choose to act like they don't see the problem and they go to that professor's office hours every week. Other people sort of shy away. I don't as much as you can, don't shy away, be, show up and show up tall for yourself, okay? I'm getting worried that this video is getting really super long. It really does come from a passion place. The student that I mentioned on the west side, and it wasn't BC, so I can't say the West Coast, but on the west side, I'll say that, in one of those law schools in Canada, they had such a difficult time. I mean, mentally, they were the worst place I've ever seen them. Like, I remember getting 2 phone calls over the course of their first year of law school, like the worst mental health phone call you could get. I don't know if, how much I'm allowed to say on YouTube about those kinds of things, but like really, like really thinking of making permanent decisions over a temporary 1L situation that they found themselves in, because there was just no way to get through these people, and there was no way to get through their professor, and with the dean as the professor's bestie, I mean, that became such a brick wall. Like, who do you turn to when the person that was supposed to protect you is hurting you? Eventually, for what it's worth, with those that are invested in the story and have watched up to this point, eventually the student did make it out okay. They did end up passing the course. They had to involve a lot of people, like I mentioned, and including a lot of people from that school, like other professors as well, showing how much other professors really did respect the student and how he had such a good working relationship with them. Some of them were even writing him references for how amazing of a student he was when it came to job applications and things like that. And he did need to involve, lawyers personally, checking in, lawyer to lawyer with the dean, saying, hey, this really isn't right. Eventually I think it was a scenario where he needed like a 60 to pass the course, and he was passed. He earned a 62 or a 64, but the hell that man went through to get that credit, it should never have occurred. It should never have occurred. I don't want to give the whole story away in case there's any chance of identifying the student, so I don't want to say exactly what it was about, but it was a case of discrimination, and him just not being treated fairly owing to his family circumstances, and it was hell. It was hell on earth. We go into law school bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thinking that the people we're learning from are like these gods, right? I mean, they're teaching us the law. They're lawyers that are teaching us how to be lawyers, so they must be really good lawyers and really respectable and professional. At the end of the day, they're just people. The truth of the matter is, you have bad doctors, you have bad lawyers, you have bad law school professors, you have bad plumbers, you have bad teachers. You can have bad anything and anybody, okay? It's people, and sometimes people click the wrong way, something goes off in their mind, and that can be really, really hard. But other times you come across people with beautiful souls, professors that just love teaching, and they love you if you make that personal connection, and that are going to give you references for years and years to come, and that they're going to be a source for you to call for years and years to come, and a genuine professional connection once you make it to be a lawyer yourself. And those beautiful connections are the ones worth holding on to, okay? So for what it's worth, this video had some advice on what to do if you're faced with a really difficult position as regards a law school professor. And I hope the fact that this resource is even out there comforts you to realize that you are not alone. It might feel like this big, bad, scary thing is happening in your corner right now, and it's taking over your life, and it might be the reason you don't finish first or second or third year of law school, whatever year you're in. You're gonna finish, you're gonna work hard, you're gonna fight for yourself, okay? You fight until the end, and then you fight some more. So chin up, and if you're going through something, particularly difficult, feel free to reach out to professionals outside of your law school as well. You can even write to us here at Graphene. I'm never going to turn down, a law school student struggling with their mental health from being treated unfairly or discriminated against. It is Graphene Business Law, okay? So I want to give that disclaimer, but at the end of the day, I'm still super well connected with other lawyers across all disciplines. So happy to help. Take care of yourselves, and thank you for watching.